Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, your one-stop shop for all things Carlisle United. From Simon Hackney to Steve Harkness and Neil Moore to Lee Miller, we've got it covered. In today's episode we're going to be performing a bit of an inquest on United's recent rotten run of form and discuss the future holds for boss Chris Beech. Looking ahead to the home doubleheader against Cambridge and Crawley, as well as a roundup of the latest news and what ex-Blues have been getting up to. And for the second episode in a row, I'm joined by both of my co-hosts, Mike Booth and Dan McLennan. How's it going, lads? But it's not going very well, is it really? Particularly in all things Carlisle United.
No, not at all. I mean, we were saying the other day that we need to be getting, I said the other day last week, we need to be getting sort of 6 points from these games ideally, and it's just a pathetic return, really, isn't it?
I don't know, you think, Dan?
Well, I said these 3 home games we have to get 6 or 7 points after the weekend. We can still get 6 points for them, but on last night's evidence, that is looking a tad unlikely.
Well, when you consider who were playing at the weekend, I think you'd probably strongly argue that, wouldn't you? I think it's going to be a tough ask to come out of it with 6 or 7 points. So, okay, before we get into the whole inquest into the last 2 games, let's just do a couple of little bits of news. First up, the reserves. Well, the first team aren't doing very well, but the reserve side aren't doing too bad, are they? They got through to the national final, the Central League Cup today. They saw off Championship side Huddersfield Town's second string 3-2 to reach the national final, where they'll face Bournemouth. Location and date to be confirmed, but good result for them. Yeah, Chedwin Scott got a brace and Taylor Charters opened the scoring in that game. Interestingly, that former loanee Mika Obiero scored one of the Terriers' goals, didn't he, Dan? Good result that for them.
Yeah, and it was, when you look at the team Carlisle put out, welcome return for Danny Devine, getting some minutes on the grass. Magnus Norman played the first half. But apart from Scott and Walker and sort of Charters and Dixon, it was mainly young first-year pros and youth team players, which I think Huddersfield were fairly similar.
Yeah,
but
they've got quite a strong academy usually, Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Decent result that. Other bit of news is obviously we mentioned last week that Dean Furman was called up to the South Africa squad once again, but it turns out he's turned down the chance to go, hasn't he, Mike? He's decided to stay with United, and it seems to be linked to this whole red zone limitations on what you have to quarantine when you come back, doesn't it, by the looks of things?
Yeah, it's a bit weird though, isn't it? Because he hasn't even been on our bench the past few games, and then obviously he started against Leyton Orient last night. I blanked it from my memory because it's suppressing it. But yeah, so it sort of seems to indicate that he's maybe going to feature a bit more in the coming weeks.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I think he played pretty well, I thought, against Leyton Orient compared against the rest of the squad.
I was just going to say he was probably the one bright point of last night, which obviously we'll cover in more shortly.
Yeah, indeed. As well as the Dean Furman news, Chris Beech has touched on the fact that it sounds like Josh Coyote is going to join up with the Ireland under-21 squad who face Wales this week, but he's not really convinced that he's fit, and it's just them that looking to assess his injury levels, I think, Dan?
Yeah, it's always a bit of a contentious issue when club and country sort of, shall we say, disagree regarding injuries. Ireland are fully entitled to have a look at themselves. I know they've only got one game and it is a friendly, so it could be that he doesn't feature, or maybe the bench at most. Obviously, the lad will be keen to play. You know, he scored last time out, but we'll see what comes of that.
I think it probably helps as well that the game's against Wales, isn't it? So it's not as much of an issue in that sense. So it makes it a little bit easier for us. Right, well, let's get on to it then. Lads, we've put it off for a few minutes there, but it's time to talk about the last two games.
Do we have to?
I wish we didn't. I genuinely really wish we didn't. It's the 3-1 defeat against Stevenage and the 1-0 defeat against Leyton Orient.
Let's cover the games as quick as possible and get onto our discussion, because we're only going to depress ourselves talking about these games, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, just things have went from bad to worse in terms of the season, haven't they? I mean, it's 1 win in 12 games now, and I think any slim hopes of promotional playoffs have pretty much vanished now. It's going to take a bit of a miracle. It's not just the fact that we've got to get points, but we need quite a few teams above us to drop points, and all like a good 5 or 6 to drop points as well. That's where the problem lies now. And as it stands, we've got a bit of a battle to finish in the top half, haven't we, Mike?
Yeah, we really do. And, I've said for a few weeks now, I don't think Beech will be under pressure if we finish mid-table, but we're starting to slip into what you'd call bottom half now. So, yeah, but I mean, the two games, it's weird. The Bradford game, we seem to just be getting things right again, and things started to click, and then we're just back to what we were directly before the Bradford game, again.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, I don't know what you think. Let's start briefly with the Stevenage game. I mean, it's one of those ones, isn't it? We started with quite a lively open. We could have scored in the opening 20 seconds. And then I think Stevenage probably were starting to get on top. They had 2 decent chances. And then Rod McDonald has just have a bit of a brain fart, doesn't he? And he just doesn't need to do that. It's one of those ones where he's got to make a split-second decision, hasn't he? And he's made the wrong one. Yeah,
I mean, I was actually, I'd had my car in the garage, so I was driving back from the garage and I put the game on. And he, when he got sent off, that was the turning point. We then, a couple of minutes later, we took Gimme Toure off, who wasn't best pleased, I think would be a polite way.
Yeah.
And that just changed the entire complexion of the game. And I know we got it back level with a bit of a goal, but were we really in it after the red card? Not for me.
But that was the only shot on target, the goal that we had.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones, isn't it? You can basically pick out the fact that McDonald's probably cost us any chance of winning that game with his decision in terms of pulling the player back. But I'd also point out there was a gaping hole in the midfield when the ball was played through. They cut through us in 3 passes, or 2 passes, wasn't it? 1 pass from the defence through to the midfield. No one was picking up their midfielder. He plays the ball through for the winger to chase, and they're through on goal.
Teams are suddenly doing to us what we were doing to them when we hit our good patch.
Yeah, they hit us quickly on the break.
Last night to win a goal for Orient backs that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the epitome of Route 1.
Yeah, it's just not good enough, really, was it, in that sense?
No.
In terms of taking Toure off, Mike, would you say this was the wrong call? I think most people seem to agree on that now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was looking pretty fresh because he'd been out a couple of games earlier. He was actually looking a lot fresher than some of his teammates, who I think were a bit tired. But generally speaking, when you're a man down, it only really affects you going forwards, because a lot of teams will sort of go to they'll still have 4 at the back once you've had a man sent off, but you just kind of go without a striker. And Toure's one of them that can just take two or three defenders out of the equation. And yeah, you could see that he was unhappy to come off. But, speaking of freshness, we kind of went the other way against Leyton Orient, and we played a few players who haven't been getting game time, but they haven't been getting any game time, so they're really lacking in match fitness, and if we'd have just sort of been rotating fairly over the past few weeks, that wouldn't be an issue. But it's kind of either players are playing too much football and they're knackered, or they haven't played enough football and not match fit. That's kind of what we have to choose from at the minute.
And that brings me on to what I was going to mention regarding rotation is, and a lot of people mentioned this last night, because there's an amazing excuse for it, but the use of substitutions. We weren't the quickest. We obviously had to make one when McDonald went off on Saturday, but the other subs weren't forthcoming. When you thought taking Toure off was the outball gone. When you're under the cosh, you need an outball. Zanzala isn't an outball. He's a finisher. If you took one of the midfielders off, at least you could have aimed for Toure to bring Zanzala in. Yeah. And then last night, I think I posted on the forum on 75 minutes. The camera panned across to our bench. All 7 subs were sat down.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
And I'm like, well, surely you should be warming up in case, because you don't want to come on cold. Yes, they've been up and down a couple of times, but to not have any subs warming up 75 minutes into a game, it was frankly incredible for me. It's bizarre, and I'll let Lee deliver the excuse that was heard post match.
Well, we'll discuss that in just a minute because we'll get onto the Orient game shortly. But my thoughts on the Toure thing is I completely agree with you. It didn't give us an outball, and to me it smacked of Beech saying, "All right, let's settle for a point now." And not being funny, but Stevenage have scored barely any goals all season, and yet we basically invited them to have a go at us. I think they scored something like 10% of their goals this season have come in that game against us. That tells you a lot, doesn't it? It just felt. I felt like if McDonald got sent off on say 65 or 70 minutes and he took Toure off at that point, it was 0-0. I would have said fair enough.
Yeah, you could understand that.
Hold it tight. Let's get to go 70 minutes, having to sit back and soak up pressure and do a lot of chasing. It was never going to work. And let's be honest, we got luck. It was a complete fluke that we got a goal and got back into the game.
I have to say though, while it was, Zanzala did excellent play in the build-up to it.
He does so much donkey work. Fair play to that. In the last couple of games, he's done so much work for so little reward. And he's got every right to be kept in that team on a decent run now because he's earned his place in the team with the work he's put in. For me, I think he messed up there, I think, Beech. I think he could have easily... He was very quick to make that change and get Hayden in there. What he could have easily done is put Mellish in at centre-back for a bit. Didn't have to make the sub quickly, did he? He could... Mellish came to us as just been voted the best young player in the conference, playing centre-back for Gateshead. He didn't actually play that much centre-back for us last season. He played at left-back a lot, actually, filling in for Jack Iredale. Why couldn't he have just slotted him in there for 5-10 minutes while we sorted things out?
Because he's obsessed with playing him as an attacking midfielder.
Yeah, it's the obvious thing, isn't it? And then you could have kept your 4 of Dickinson on one side, Toure on one, on the other, and then Riley and Guy in the middle, keeping it busy.
Hard working middle duo, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be a hard working middle duo. I'm sure they would cover the ground. He just seems straight away. His idea was, I don't want to lose this one now. There was no sort of, and I can't sort of understand. You want to keep it tight, but you don't want to just sit there and invite the pressure on you, do you?
Not that early in the game. We were halfway through the first half, was it?
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes gone. For me, he could have waited a little bit and at least. I think he dropped Guy into centre. In fact, that's the thing as well. When he got sent off, he didn't obviously bring Hayden on straight away. He dropped Guy to centre back. He just seems to have this idea that Mellish cannot play centre back at all, doesn't he?
Exactly.
It's a weird obsession. Before we move on to the Orient game, brief mention to Brennan Dickinson there, Dan. Just rotten luck for him, isn't it? He looks like he could be in trouble for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think there was an article today saying they were awaiting results. I assume he's had a scan or something, but
never a good sign, is it?
I think I read that he had to go to the local hospital. He was on crutches, and I think Gavin Skelton ended up driving him home separately from the rest of the team. Obviously, the time it took to get sorted. So, not been the best of seasons for Brennan, who undoubtedly could be one of the better players in League Two. We know he's got the calibre. But
we were just starting to see, weren't we? I think we just started to see flashes of his quality.
Yeah. He missed the first half, and then we had all the COVID and postponements, and I think it's just a season to write off for him. Yeah,
I think that's the best way to look at that one. All right, well, let's move on to the Orient game then. I mean,
do we have to?
God, this was genuinely one of the worst games of football I watched in a long time. I mean, and I watched the Grimsby game a few weeks ago. Yeah. It tells you a lot, doesn't it? Really, I mean, it does sort of open your eyes up, doesn't it, when you're watching it on the telly rather than being there in person. And when you're in person, you got distractions. You're talking to your mates, whatever, aren't you? You're catching up and things like that. When you watch it on telly, you realise how bad it was. And I think it was summed up perfectly, wasn't it, Dan, by that clip that Rob Morley put on Twitter of about 40 seconds of the action, and it doesn't look good for both teams, does it?
No, it was just sort of like aerial ping pong around the left central midfield area, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's summed up because it was a clip that he filmed live while the game was being broadcast on the iFollow, and James Phillips is commentating on it, and he's not talking about the action at all. He's talking about anything other than that. He's talking about things happening elsewhere, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's no talk of the actual game itself. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts were on this game, Mike. I mean, just for me, just totally a game to forget, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that video, I think it was like 40 seconds long or whatever. But I think you could have done any 40 seconds and it would have looked the same. Do you know what I mean? It was just an absolutely awful game to watch. And like you say, like if we're gone, would at least sort of have a laugh with your mates and maybe have a few pints after the game, or even a few pints before the game, and you'd be half cut and you wouldn't really care so much. But it's just awful to watch. And like when you're sort of watching it at home and you don't have these sort of other distractions of the match day experience, you could say it's just awful to watch. I'm starting to think now that maybe I don't even like football. I just like drinking at 6 o'clock in the morning, like, to be honest, because it's just terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it just awful. I mean, let's just get straight to the goal, shall we? I mean, this goal sums up the game, really, doesn't it? Big punt forward, keeper comes running out, player takes a chance, lobs it over him, scores with one of the last chances of the match. I mean, it's one of those ones. There's no doubt Paul Farman is at fault for the goal, isn't he? It's his fault. He doesn't need to come out for that one. What I'd say is when you watch the video back, it looks to me like when the ball's kicked, when it's in the air, it looks like it's going to bounce straight down the middle. And I think Farman comes out towards the penalty spot thinking, I've got a chance to get in here, get the ball early, and then I can release it early to get us back off the pitch quickly. But he gets to the penalty spot and he realises actually it's bouncing towards the right wing. And he panics, and rather than sort of taking a step back and heading back towards his goal, which he probably had time to do, he rushes out to the left side of his area to chase the ball.
Yeah, because I think Furman was coming across, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was coming across to cover the attacker. And the attacker looks and sees, what the hell's the keeper doing here? You know what, I'm just going to have a go. And he just lobs it over him into the empty goal. It's one of those ones, isn't it? He's been a really good judge of this whole season, actually, Farman, in the keeper sweeper role. And it's the one time he's got it wrong, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, we can't be too harsh on Paul Farman. He's been one of the better players over the season, but I think he'd probably be the first to hold his hand up to it as well. Leyton Orient tweeted a view of it from the director's box in the main stand. It was quite interesting watching it from that angle. I assume one of their sports science guys was filming from up there for their own stuff, but
it just wasn't good, really, wasn't it? I mean, Mike, to me, we just lacked ambition in this game to win it, didn't we? We looked like we were fairly comfortable with the idea of a 0-0, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to their goal, I think Wilkinson still had a bit to do with it.
It's a good finish.
It is a good finish. I'm not taking the blame away from Farman here, but as a team, you want to be asking those sorts of questions of a goalkeeper. You want to be, catching him out and sort of having him, because as a keeper, when you've started to come out, you have a choice. You either come out further or you go back to your line. You can't sit where you are and you're panicking and this and that and the other, and that's kind of what we should be doing, asking them sorts of questions of teams and making players make rash decisions. And we're not doing that at all, were we? We were just sort of, the only questions that we were asking is, do you want to pass this ball to a teammate, or do you want to knock it long? Because you can just have it, it's fine. Like,
the amount of aimless punts was astonishing this game. And to give you an example here, Callum Guy, first half of the season, one of the best midfielders in the division. I don't think anyone would doubt that. He was winning the ball back all the time. But when he was getting it, he was then playing out wide to likes of Tanner and to Anderton, and he was getting the wingers involved, and he was playing the simple passes when he had to. I lost count of the amount of times last night he won the ball and then just hooked it forward with no thought as to who it was going to. He's basically just saying, all right, Ozzy, you have a chase of this up front. And fair play, Ozzy, he chased down a few of them and created something, but that's not a viable tactic long term, is it? I mean,
but is he being told to do that?
Probably, yeah. But I mean, the one time we've played well recently was the Bradford game, where we weren't 100% like we played the first half of the season, but we started to do that again. Callum Guy started to get the ball down and played out wide to players out wide, but we weren't doing that. I mean, I can't understand it. I really can't. And you know, Beech will bang on about the wind. I'll talk about that in a minute. But if the wind's an issue, get the ball down. Stop knocking it long. Surely that's the best thing to do. I mean, well, I don't know what your thoughts are on all this, Dan. I mean, it just really frustrates me.
Yeah, as I've slightly mentioned earlier, the only one highlight of the game for me was Dean Furman. I thought he was at least trying to create things more so than Guy probably. I mean, I'm a confirmed fan of Furman, as you know, and he was the one who looked like he would make something happen last night. There was 2 or 3 times in the first half where he was breaking up the left, swapping it a bit with Alessandro a couple of times, and we were getting a couple of good crosses in, which in comparison to what you've just said about Guy, who just seemed to, he just wants to get rid of it and straight away. As earlier in the season, he'd maybe take a touch and then look up and play it, and the confidence was there. It clearly isn't at the moment.
No, absolutely. And you're right about Furman. Furman was quite direct in the way he was playing. He got the ball down, but when I say direct, he was playing sharp, quick passes into players out wide, and it looked positive. He covered
a lot of ground as well. I thought.
Yeah. I've got to say as well, Torre, his best games for us have been on the left. He's not good enough at crossing to play on the right. He's good at cutting inside and making defenders get a little bit nervous, but his crossing is just not good enough, is it? And it's one of them. Maybe if he could cross a ball, he wouldn't be at Carlisle and all the rest of it. But all his best games have been on the left, so just play him on the left.
Yeah, it was weird that the couple of times where he looked a threat in this game was when he was on the left wing. And I can't understand why Beech doesn't notice that and think, right, Gibby, you go and play out on the left for half an hour. Because I'm not really funny, but Alessandro can do it on either side. Alessandro's comfortable, and Alessandro linked up well with Armour when he was on the right. It just didn't make any sense to me, that. And actually, Dan, I would point out that there was one other positive point from the game. We took a direct free kick.
Oh, yeah.
and you know what? It wasn't far off being on target. It was only just wide of the post. And you think, and that wasn't actually the most clearest opportunity. It was a bit further out than you'd probably normally have a go from. And you think, why have we not been doing that sooner? That is infuriating. That really is. Let's talk about the post-match interview and Beech's comments, and particularly let's focus on what we mentioned before there, Dan, about the subs.
Well, no. I think we should start. There's one comment we need to start on.
Yeah.
And that was, we played well tonight.
Yeah, I can't have that. I just can't. We didn't play well.
I genuinely don't know what game Chris Beech was watching with that comment.
It's puzzling, isn't it? I mean, he's made the comment, isn't he? And we'll get a bit more into Beech in a moment. But the whole, they worked hard, and the people can't say they aren't putting the effort in. It's like, no one is saying they're not putting the effort in. In fact, most people are saying, actually, they still look like a side that's playing for the manager. But that's not enough on its own. You need more than that. You need good performances to go with it. And we're not getting that now. We're not getting players who are being more composed and getting the ball down and trying to play a bit of football alongside being direct when you have to. The whole subs thing, his excuse was, I don't think he directly said the words win, but he more or less said the conditions and, with the win and that kind of thing. I didn't think it was right to make any subs. And I've never heard a manager use that as an excuse for not making subs. Have you?
No.
No.
It smacks of me of he thought, I'm not going to make any subs there. I'm going to keep it tight for as long as possible and try and nick it. And then afterwards he's thinking, I've got to make an excuse now for why I've not made any subs. And I think he used the other one was, you've got to be, if I make the sub as well, it could open up for opportunity for the full-backs to get up the pitch for Orient. And it's like, not being funny, but if you put on a Mari Patrick, that gives the full-back something to think about, surely. And he's got to track back a bit more because he's got a player who's going to have a go at goal.
Exactly.
It's so negative in the thinking. And they talk about, but Orient have got a load of 6 foot, tall players, and you've got to consider that. And he said that's one of the reasons he kept Alessandro. Well, Alessandro's 5'11", and we leave him up on most set pieces.
Mm.
So what difference would it make if you put a Mari Patrick on there instead? He's just over 6 foot.
Exactly.
I don't understand. There's no excuse for me for not making any subs in that game. Not looking and thinking. For me, that he settled for a 0-0 in that game. He said, I don't want to get beat. Keep a clean sheet. I'll be happy with that as a start of a run in these 3 home games. For me, there was no ambition to win that game, I don't think.
No,
I don't know what your thoughts are, Dan.
Yeah, it's. I think you're right. It's smacked of keep the clean sheet. We'll get a draw at the minimum, and if we can snatch it, we can snatch it. But trying to snatch it without bringing on pacey players late on, fresh off the bench, is a strange tactic, isn't it?
It's an unusual one, isn't it? And for me, obviously, you're not going to take Zanzaro off because he actually was having a decent game. But you could have taken either Torre or Alessandro off and put Walker and Patrick on and had a go, at the very least. I know you're probably not going to make many changes in midfield. I think, actually, arguably, John Mellish had his best game in a long time, actually, I think, on Tuesday night. I think he...
Did he?
I thought he did. I thought he looked direct. And he created the one real chance in the second half by actually driving forward the ball and putting the ball into the box to Zanzala. And the shot was deflected wide. The one time a player actually looked to do that, he looked positive at the very least, which I couldn't really say that for some of the other players in the team.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones, isn't it? I mean, Beech's post-match interview, I mean, we've seen the YouTube one with the club as well, but the one with the radio was particularly short with James at times, and I think James was actually quite fair in him. I mean, he could have probably been a little bit more critical. I think he was critical in the sense, but he was... The problem was Beech, I think, was already on the line when he was reading out some of the tweets from people about the game, and none of them were complimentary, and I think that got Beech a little bit riled up, possibly.
We've got this as a talking point. The references to true supporters. Dodgy ground to go down when you start mentioning that.
And when you're on a run of 6 points from 36, and you start talking about all the true supporters are backing us and that kind of thing.
Folk are spending good money on iFollow this season, I mean...
I worked out, I've spent, I think, just over £300 on iFollow this season.
Yeah.
But I've also spent money to go to those 5 home games that we're able to go to during the campaign.
I'll tell you something as well. If Chris Beech thinks a few tweets read out on Radio Cumbria is harsh, he wants to thank his lucky stars that the paddock wasn't in attendance last night.
What do you reckon the paddock would have done if we'd had that game there last night and Chris Beech, they score in the 88th minute and Chris Beech has made no subs? Do you reckon he's going to get, we totally understand you, Chris, the conditions are bad, and Orient have got that threat going forward, being the great team that they are. Do you reckon they would have gone like that? Not a chance in hell they would have done.
But likewise, other sort of niggling issues that we've had this season, like the indirect, direct free kicks that we mentioned earlier, he would have been getting pelters for them. And I feel like the paddock maybe could have made him see sense on a couple of issues that he's quite stubborn about.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? In one sense, you look at it, and actually not having fans probably helped someone like John Mellish at the start of the season, because when he was on that dodgy run, he was able to still keep playing the games without the fans there on his back, and then he got into the great one where he was scoring goals and playing well. But then with something like this...
Those were the days, weren't they?
The glory days.
The good old days.
But then now, if you look at it now, the manager thinks everything's hunky-dory, and actually we're not doing too bad, we're playing all right. Whereas actually if the fans were there, the fans would be telling him, this is crap, it's not good enough. We need to be playing better. That's what they'll be saying. The criticising fans thing, I think he's got to be very, very careful with that. He really does have to, because at the end of the day, if the club say, right, we're going to stick with him till the summer, and give him a chance to go again next season. Well, it'll be funny, but people paying money to watch those games right now are going to look and think, if that's what he's serving up, why should I bother coming back next season? And suddenly they're struggling to get 1,000 season ticket holders, despite the fact that we haven't been able to go for ages.
If you paid for an iFollow pass for that Leyton Orient game after seeing our recent performances, you are absolutely a true fan. Do you know what I mean? There is no doubt about that, because we haven't been playing well, and I feel like the club. This is something that's sort of been ongoing for a few years now, but we used to sort of be getting gates of about 6,000, and we've kind of dwindled down to our absolute diehard loyal supporters.
We're at 4 now, aren't we?
Yeah, and I feel the sort of 4 that we're getting, these are the fans who will sort of always be there through thick and thin, but he's pissing us off now. Do you know what I mean? And it's like...
the thing is, it's a long-term thing as well. It's not just his fault, but we've had 7 years in this division now, and we're collapsing at Christmas every chance we get of going up. And there's only so much fans can put up with that for that. And people, like you said, the crowds are dropping so much. They'll get to the point where people are like, what's the point in getting excited? Because we're not doing it every season. We're just going to collapse at Christmas. And I know there's conspiracy theories and they're nonsense. They're not getting told to throw away. But the fact is we are collapsing at Christmas every chance we get. It's the way it is. Let's get straight on then. Let's get into this Inquest side of things, shall we? Because we've gone on a bit more than I thought we would about the Orient game, if I'm honest. It's 1 win from 12. That's the blunt way of putting it. How long can the run go on before you start to say the manager's not up to it? He's not capable of turning this team around, even allowing for all the excuses about a 4-week disruption in terms of games and things like that. How long can you let that go on before you've got to say enough's enough? Thanks, but it's time to move on.
I would probably say these next 2 home games at present.
Yeah.
I agree. Because after the Cambridge and Crawley games, we've got a trip to Southend, Scunthorpe at home, and Barrow away as the next 3. Now, 3 on paper, very easy fixtures. In reality, on current form, 3 months ago, we were absolutely loving the idea of going to Barrow. Now nobody's wanting to.
No, they'll beat us. On current form, they would comfortably beat us. I'm sure of that. And
we'll be on medium wave next season.
Don't you start with that. but honestly, right, if you look at the remaining fixtures, and bear in mind our away form this season's been let's be blunt on that, can you see us winning another away game this season? The only one I can see is having a chance of winning is Southend. And other than that, I look at every away game and think, we're not going to win one.
Even Southend aren't the Southend that we brushed aside earlier in the season.
No, and it's a long trip.
You look at the other ones. I've got the fixtures up here.
Yeah.
We've got Newport away on a Tuesday night. We never get anything at Newport anyway.
Yeah.
Although, is that at Cardiff?
No,
Is it at Newport?
Yeah. Bolton away the week after. As I've already said, Bolton are winning the league for me.
That terrifies me, that game.
Then the following Tuesday, we've got Cheltenham away, which you wouldn't fancy us at the moment. And then our last away game on the 1st of May is Leyton Orient again.
Just you
can't see a win, can you?
I think a point at Southend is probably the best we'll get, and I think we'll lose the rest.
A point at Southend and Barrow, maybe,
Yeah,
and that's a hell of a change from 3 months ago, isn't it?
And the thing as well, when you get to the point of playing the Barrow game, they're on the running, and at that point they might actually be at a point where they see actually 2 more wins and we're safe, and they'll be really gunning for it. Whereas we will be at the point where our season's over, and we'll list towards a defeat. That's the feeling I get for a game like that. And even with the home games remaining, how many points do you see from them? Not many. I don't see many. There's no gimmies in there. I mean, Scunthorpe have picked up a bit of form now. They're getting the odd result here and there as well. It feels like we're really listing towards a bottom half finish at the moment. In my view.
Definitely.
I put a poll up on the Be Just and Fear Not group last night after the game to get fans' thoughts on do they want to stick with Chris Beech or get rid. I put it on the Be Just Unfair Not group because if you put it on Twitter, it's open to fans of every club, and you don't get a real sort of accurate view, do you, in terms of what the fans actually think. I have to admit, I'm a little bit surprised to see that it's around about 73% are in favour of sticking with the manager. I didn't necessarily think it would be a majority in favour of getting rid, but I thought it'd be very close. But as it is, it's around about
3 to 1, isn't it, roughly?
3 to 1 roundabout, yeah. Saying they would stick with him. It's a little bit of a surprise, but actually when you look through the comments, there's still a lot of reservations. It's not people saying like, oh no, it'll be fine, we've had a bad run, it's just the way it is. People are saying, I'll stick with him, but I'm concerned. That's the feeling I get.
The main thing I saw from the comments was this thing about he's an inexperienced coach. He's not. He's coached for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. And he's not green out of a playing career, is he?
This bringing in, like a sort of Dennis Booth to Paul Simpson type figure. It's just, I don't really think that would be the answer.
No. I mean, well, Simpson had Ward to start with, didn't he? John Ward was his assistant at the start. Yeah. And then when Ward left, that's when Booth came in. So he wasn't brought in as like, oh, we're struggling, bring Dennis Booth in and he'll help turn us around. He had experience coaching there from the start.
Yeah, he was another head to bounce ideas off, wasn't he?
Yeah. And not be funny, but Beech has now been in charge for, 15 months now, something like that? 16 months?
Yeah.
If I'm Chris Beech and you're saying to me, I'm going to bring in an assistant, like, let's say Holdsworth, we'll get onto him in a minute, by the way, says to him, right, we're going to bring in an experienced coach to support you to get you through this. I'm Chris Beech, I'd turn and go, why? Well, I'm confident in my own ability. He seems to think we're playing well. So yeah, Mike, I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of the whole bringing in an experienced coach thing.
Well, he is an experienced coach, and to put it simply, and and Gavin Skelton isn't exactly inexperienced either, is he?
No, he's been coaching for a while.
Yeah, I don't buy into that at all, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, as soon as you bring an experienced coach in, it just undermines him, because people will say the only reason we got out of this trouble is because of that experienced coach, and then your issue then, well, do you get rid of that person or do you keep them on or whatever? It's not like he's caretaker or something until the end of the season, and it's just someone in to give him a hand to get through, and then he becomes permanent boss. He's the gaffer at the end of the day. So, I'm really not convinced by that bit at all. He seems quite unwilling to criticise the players, doesn't he? And I understand that's kind of a modern manager thing. They try and keep the players on the side and that. But it's interesting. We'll hear from a Cambridge fan in a minute as part of the preview for that game. And they talk about the fact that their manager doesn't mince his words when they play badly. He will bollock them if he thinks they've been crap. Beech just seems so reluctant to do that. And maybe it does need him to actually... Because if he's thinking we're playing well in a game like that Orient game, and he's going into the dressing room saying to them, oh, you played well, lads, you were just a bit unlucky, we just got a bit of a sucker punch. They're going to go home thinking, all right, we played all right there, that's fine. And they didn't. That's the way it is, isn't it, Mike?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think we could do with a bit of that, but I think we need something more on the pitch as well. I've said before, years ago, when we had some really good sort of leaders out on the pitch, and we don't really have any of them, and quite a lot say if a player will shoot rather than square it or whatever, they're just all sort of saying, oh, unlucky, rather than, having a go at each other and saying, you should have squared it to me there. They don't seem aggressive enough.
Too nice, aren't they?
Yeah. Too many nice players in there, not enough really, isn't it? That's my point. You need a couple of in there who are going to wind people up. I mean, even like when Ian Atkins was in charge from struggling in the bottom, he brought in someone like Darren Carr, who was a proper nasty piece of work. Yeah, a proper nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
But he helped get us a little bit away from trouble because that's the kind of person he was. He wouldn't take any crap. The lack of plan B is costing us. And I know that Beech will have built this squad around playing 4-3-3. He said that's the way he wants us to play. He wants us to play up formation in that style. Fine. But it is not working, and it's 12 games of not working now. When do you get to the point where you think, just change it up a little bit, go free at the back for a couple of games, see how it does? Because if you're persevering with it, and all you're doing is sort of tinkering around the edges and taking a couple of players out, but playing the same way, and it's not working, it's going to cost you, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, like we've mentioned before, other teams have more than cottoned on to how we set out to play now. Quick release, long ball, long throw,
percentage plays.
Yeah, and we're happy without the ball if need be, but if that's long gone out the window. But there just doesn't seem to be much change to it, does there? It's like you say, go free at the back for a game. Even just why not go old fashioned and go 4-4-2 and play two bloody strikers?
Yeah, I know that a lot of people say with that one, the problem there is you only end up with two in centre midfield and you can get overrun. Well, we've played a couple of teams recently that play two in midfield and they've not struggled against us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And not dominated. If you have someone like Toure, one thing Toure does do, he does get up and down and he does get back and helps his full back a bit. So I don't think it'd be too much of a problem.
No, absolutely not.
But the thing is, as well, is it's not as if we don't have players that you can play football with. We have some really good ball-playing players, so why not try and get them to play a little bit more? It's not like we're sort of the Stevenage teams of old where everyone's 6'5" and, built like a rugby player.
The bygone era of Graham Westley.
Yeah. Exactly. We have a very good football team, and why not play to... You could say it's playing to our strengths a little bit, having some of them players play football.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the turtleneck-wearing legend that is David Holdsworth. Very quiet, isn't he? It's funny that he was crowing about what a great January transfer window we had. He was crowing before Christmas about our great form, but we've not really heard from him for nearly 2 months now.
I actually made a prediction on the forum this morning that if enough of us go on about him, he will probably wheel himself out to make some comments at some point.
Maybe we'll get part 5 and 6 of that video finally.
But no, I think if enough people mention him on Facebook and Twitter and that he'll be forced to come down from his high chair and make comment.
Or whenever Andrew Jenkins' birthday is, because I think that can't be too far away. I think
that video is
because for those that don't know, I think it must be not far off a year ago, because I think it was like the start of lockdown. But he shared this really weird video, didn't he? And it was on the it was on the club's social medias, and he was just it was about a minute long,
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a minute long, and wishing happy birthday to Andrew Jenkins.
When this edition comes out for all you listeners, after you've had a chance to listen to it, we'll dig it out and post it.
Yeah, because we've saved it somewhere, haven't we?
Yeah.
The club promptly deleted it the morning after.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, it was just bizarre.
But anyway, to be more serious on the point, to be fair, he's director of football. He should be coming out and speaking when things are bad as well. He should be, at the very least, coming out and saying, we're backing Chris. And you know what? Even if they come out and say, look, we had it really rough with coronavirus, because Beech has used that as an excuse. And if it was that bad, then fair enough. Come out and say, you know what? The club was affected by coronavirus really badly, and actually worse than we first thought. This season is a write-off. And just be honest and say that. And I don't think fans will be offended if you did that. They would say, you know what? Fair enough. It'd say, we're being honest here. Things just haven't gone for us since Christmas. The coronavirus has really badly affected us. We're going to work towards getting the performances better before the end of the season and have a real good go at it over the summer and into next season. I'm sure people would respect that a lot more, wouldn't they?
Mm. Well, it'd be honest for the start, wouldn't it? It'd be honesty, which is not something that comes in great spades with Carlisle United at times.
But as well, if Beech is to go at some point, that'll be it. A couple of managers haven't succeeded, and who's the common denominator? Holdsworth has always been here, so why? It's all good and well sacking the managers, but why are questions not been asked of him? I
was going to mention that myself. Yeah. At some point, his role surely gets questioned.
Well, the thing is,
a lot of Carlisle fans don't like the idea of a director of football. I'm the opposite. I think it's a staple part of the modern game at a professional club, and I've been quite vocal about that on the forum since Holdsworth came in. The question isn't whether we need a director of football, the question is David Holdsworth the right man to be our director of football?
Would we have appointed him if he wasn't a mate of Phil Day?
No.
He wouldn't have been anywhere near the job.
No.
Not a chance. He literally got the job because he was there to keep an eye on things for Edward Watermill.
Yeah.
Let's be brutally honest here. There's no doubt about that. And his wage is no longer guaranteed by Edward Watermill. The club are paying it themselves. So there's responsibility there to actually deliver for me.
That's a good point. Accountability.
Yeah. And you know what? He clearly didn't want Presley as manager. I think there's been plenty of... We've heard that before, haven't we, Dan? From
yeah,
the
we all know who was preferred from David Holdsworth's point of view.
He did not want Presley as manager. That was a decision from Andrew Jenkins, I think, and the board took that above him. Chris Beech was his preferred choice as manager. Let there be no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Because he'll bang on about how great he was and how we appointed him and stuff. So he clearly had a strong hand in that. So he's got to take the responsibility in terms of that. He needs to come out and say something in the next week, surely. Because surely he can't have heard what Beech said after that game, his excuse for not making subs, and talking about how we've played well and stuff, and think to himself, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's fair enough.
Earlier in the season, you would see Holdsworth down at the touchline in a couple of games and that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And then he got his little slap on the wrist and fine from the FA for one game, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's now in the
director's
box. Yeah, because when you go over to Germany, I've said before, I follow Hertha Berlin in Germany, and their sporting director, he sits on the bench with the manager. He's a part of the actual team. He doesn't coach the team, but he's there to see what's happening and analyse and actually be able to know what's going on the bench. And you sometimes wonder if that would be a good thing for a director of football to be down there and actually see what the manager's doing.
I wouldn't be a fan of that personally. I think they're the link between the boardroom and the football department, as we call it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be a massive fan of them being on the bench, but
no, that's fair enough. Right, well, I mean, we've gone on for quite a bit on this bit anyway, so let's sort of wrap it up. I'll ask you both of you your opinions. I'll give mine as well. Stick or twist with Beech, Mike?
Well, I said get rid on the poll, but I think certainly if we don't get good results from the next two games, definitely. But it was a reluctant get rid on the poll.
Dan?
We need to get at least... Well, I wanted 6 points from the 3 games. Bearing in mind Cambridge's position and form, I think if we could get a draw against Cambridge and beat Crawley, 4 points, he gets more time. If we only get 2 points or less, that's 3 home games in the space of 8 days with a very poor return, and serious questions would need to be asked, bearing in mind those fixtures following against some of the lesser lights of the division, which we wouldn't be facing comfortably. So
sounds like you're a stick just about.
Just about, but this time next week, if we've had 2 poor results, I certainly won't be sticking. And I'm trying to be as fair as possible there, given what's gone on this, since January.
I have to admit, in the poll, I voted to get rid. That's what I said. I'll be honest with that. Part of the reasoning for that was listening to his post-match interview just didn't convince me that he realised how seriously poor we've been. I felt that it came across as a little bit deluded to me. That's my personal opinion. If he'd come out after that game and said, look, that was poor, not good enough. Yeah, we've been hit by a sucker punch, but we've not done enough to win that game, and that's not good enough. I probably would have given him a bit more slack and said, fair enough, he's accepting that we haven't been good enough and that we need to be better against Cambridge. But the fact that he doesn't realise it, that has it in the back of my head that he thinks it's all right to keep going on this run of form. And I think the lack of fans at games has probably helped almost keep that delusion going in my head. I'd agree with you both in the sense that if we can get a couple of good results from the next 2 games, if we can get 4 points from them, I'd say, okay, you've earned a bit of grace. Let's just get some better performances towards the end of the season and get ourselves a top half finish at the very least, and then kick on in the summer. But
I've just looked there at the league table on January the 2nd when we went top, when we won at Walsall, and Saturday will be exactly 12 weeks since that game, and we're currently sat in 12th, is it?
Yeah.
So for every week, we've dropped a place this year.
And I know we haven't played for some of those weeks, yeah, but yeah. Just for me, I would have said get rid, but the fact that he wasn't sacked today tells me he's not going to be sacked before the weekend, because they would have just got rid of him today if it was going. They're going to stick with him. Fair enough. That's the way it is. Get a couple of good results, and you know what? Fine. Give him the time. But there has to be improved performances before the end of the season. Can't keep playing like that, because it'll just put off people coming next season's games.
If we could draw Cambridge and beat Crawley, you would maybe think, well, given that we're playing Southend, Scunthorpe and Barrow, let's see what happens from them.
Yeah.
But if
we then lose to Southend, then
if we lose to if we lose those 3 games,
that's it.
Good grief.
Yeah, just the way it is. Well, that's been a long first half, that lads, and people won't realise, but a bit of a technical slog as well, unfortunately, because the Gremlins have been in there.
I'm sure you'll knit it together seamlessly.
Oh, God knows I'm going to do that, but there you go. So I think that's the end of the first half. I think we're on an agreement. He's in his last chance saloon, basically. We need to start getting results.
I think that's a fair.
Yeah. I think even those who've said stick generally on that poll have said the same, haven't they? Basically. Yeah. There you go. Okay, that's the end of the first half. We'll take a little break now, and then we'll be back to look ahead to the games against Cambridge and Crawley. So we'll be back in just a sec.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Okay, so we're back for part 2 now. We're going to look ahead to the games against Cambridge and Crawley. First up, it's one of our away fan podcast preview bits. So we speak to a fan who presents their own podcast following another League Two club. Today we've got Jack from the Under The Abbey Stand podcast. Funny enough, Jack is actually from Carlisle originally. So he lives down in Cambridge now. He's a Cambridge fan, and he's one of the presenters on the Under The Abbey Stand podcast. And he spoke to us about the quite frankly, brilliant season Cambridge are having, which I don't think anyone really expected. So here's the bit we did with Jack right now. Okay, Jack, so thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Cambridge United, what a season you were having. I mean, go back to pre-season. Surely you could not have imagined how well this campaign was going to go for you guys, could you?
No, absolutely not. I think there was some kind of cautious optimism about how Cambridge could do this season, given getting the right players in and things going their way. There was a load of, unsureness about everything, really. We weren't sure whether the season would go as normal. But yeah, going into it, there's certainly no thoughts that would be in the automatic promotion places come the end of March. And it's things have gone our way this season brilliantly, but there's been some standout players in there, and it's been a great season so far. Just a shame we've not been able to be there to see it, really.
Yeah, it's one of those frustrating things, isn't it? We were quite lucky at Carlisle. I think you guys actually got to go to a couple of games as well, didn't you? But we got a few games at Christmas when things were going well for us. Funny enough, it's all gone to pot now. But what's been the secret of how you've done so well? I mean, when I look through the squad, it doesn't look the strongest to me, but it seems to have just a couple of quality players in the key areas.
It's interesting because there's those kind of highlight players that you would see. So Wes Houlihan's been a huge part of everything in Cambridge United's success this season. You know, he was playing Saturdays and not the Tuesdays, and there was quite a big correlation between not winning Tuesday night games when he wasn't playing and winning Saturdays when he was. So he's kind of the linchpin, and he's got that international quality. You know, even at 39, he's probably one of the best players in the league. So he's been unreal. Paul Mullin has just become our equal record goal scorer over a league season, and he's just been unreal. So sharp in front of goal, you know, really endeared himself to the fans. But there's just been like a proper solidity through that squad that we haven't had in years gone by. And there's got to be honourable mentions to two of the old guard, Greg Taylor and Harrison Dunk, who've kind of had questions asked of them for the last few years within the Cambridge United, really, and they've just replied this season. Greg's been kind of the solid mainstay at centre-back. He's had quite a few centre-back partners, but he's been the one who's been there throughout. And Harrison Dunk on the left-hand side, both at left-back and further forward, has just, proved his critics wrong. And there's just been players like that. There's been solidity in the middle. Bringing in Hiram Boateng from MK Dons has been amazing. We've not had him for as long as we thought we were going to because of a shoulder injury, but when he's played, he's been a real cut above. So just players like that, keeping relatively injury-free, but even when we've had those injuries, calling on players on the bench. And it's just been a really good squad effort and well managed by Mark Bonner as well. Hats off to Mark Bonner, because there was a few doubters there when he got the job, but really it's been a good success story so far.
I'll get on to Mark in a moment, actually, because like I said, he's done an incredible job by the looks of things. But interesting, you mentioned Houlihan there. We nearly signed him, I think, about 18 years ago when he was playing in Ireland still, Shelbourne. And we had Roddy Collins as our manager back then, the Irishman. And just couldn't quite get him. And I think he ended up going a year or two later to Norwich or wherever it was he went to, and he's been a success ever since. Talk about your manager, Mark Bonner. I mean, what an incredible job he's done it's his first management job, isn't it, I think? And the job he's done, you just couldn't have expected to have gone as well, could you?
Not at all. He's been in the Cambridge United setup for a long time, looking after the youth team, and he's been developing his kind of coaching style or whatever. But this is his first job, taking on as caretaker and then becoming full time. And he calls a spade a spade. His post-match interviews are very kind of forthright. He's very careful about how he words it, but he's also, he gives the players a bit of a bollocking when they need it. But also he's just really good at getting those players playing. He changes it up kind of correctly. I feel like Cambridge United over the years, the last few managers, if you look at Joe Dunn, Sean Derry, Colin Calderwood, have all kind of changed systems when their hands have been forced. But I feel like Bonner's kind of got a couple of systems in mind, and he studies the game, studies when it's right to play that. And he just is a football-minded manager and doesn't crumble under pressure, because Cambridge have had a couple of runs this season which could have led to, a capitulation, much like Carlisle have had. And luckily, they've kind of managed to pull that back. And we were talking about how sad it is that we've not had fans in, but Cambridge United's poorest run this season was actually when we had the fans in. So I don't know if somehow they've benefited from that this season. But Bonner's just done a cracking job. And whatever happens this season, I feel like Cambridge United have had a new lease of life, and a lot of that is down to his management.
Got to mention Jack Iredale. Obviously, you signed him in the summer after we let him go. How is he getting on? He seems to be doing pretty well. Scored a few good goals for you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, when we're talking back, you could almost name every player in the squad as having contributed, really. There's people who've done everything, and Iredale's been one of those who's, he's done really well. He's come in and taken his chance when he's been given it. He's not started every game, but when he's played really well. And like you say, those goal contributions, it's not just the goals he's scored, but he supplies a few assists as well, and assisted the winner for Wes Houlihan on against Forest Green at the weekend as well. So he just give that attacking threat. He scored an absolute corker a few weeks back and got a brace. So he offers an attacking threat as well as being a pretty solid defender. So I think there were questions asked about him when he came in from the fans, and he certainly answered those critics. And it's nice to see him, be up for it, even if he's not the starting every game. He always seems like he's up for the challenge and up for giving something for the team.
It's frustrating. I should mention there not being able to go to games, but as a fan, to see your team having probably the best season in such a long time, taking away obviously how well you did to get all the conference when you did. Is it frustrating to think to yourself, this is brilliant, but we're not actually there to enjoy it?
It's difficult. It's difficult because, you get this lockdown period we've been in now for over a year, and you get so excited about a Saturday or a Tuesday night trip. And of course, this Saturday coming is one of the biggest dates in the calendar for Cambridge United fans. The away trip to Carlisle is an amazing day out. It's a long train journey. Everyone gets up for it. We're up at 6 a.m. It's all that's what being a football fan and going to the games is all about. And missing out on that, regardless of how your team's doing, is really tough. But when your team's up there like Cambridge are, it makes it even harder. And it's hard when you have to watch from home on your laptop or on your TV. And we scored a 94th minute winner the other day and went absolutely crazy. And you turn around, and it's just you sat in your front room celebrating like a madman. It does take something away from it, but it's not like this decision's been taken lightly. It's just a shame, and I guess it'll make us more thankful when we are allowed to get back there about how good it is going down to the football.
Definitely. You obviously mentioned a few players who are key players there. I mean, take away Wes Houlihan for a minute, who's obviously been brilliant for you. Who are the danger men we need to sort of watch out for, maybe that we don't know about as much at the weekend? Obviously, Paul Mullen seems an obvious one with his goals, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mullen, of course, has been the key. He's so hot in front of goal. He'll score those kind of poacher-style goals. He'll score penalties, but he's also banged a few in from outside the box as well. He's really versatile. He's really strong. Joe Ironside up there with him as well is big, burly striker who will get amongst defenders, and he does a lot of work, the second pass before the goal, or just getting amongst defenders, dragging defenders away. So he's a really good complement to when Paul Mullen's playing up top. And Cambridge United have benefited from having Liam O'Neill back in the setup as well. He plays further back, at the base of the diamond, depending on how Cambridge are playing. But he's just brought a bit more solidity and actually in a bit, joined the defence and attack together a bit more, which was something we'd maybe missed in a couple of games if we look back to the Scunthorpe loss and the Bolton loss. So yeah, having him back has been good. So there's kind of danger from all over the pitch, really. And of course, Houlihan contributes with goals and assists, but really, any of that front six could put you in a bit of trouble.
It's got me worried now. It's fair to say. What's your long-term sort of ambitions at Cambridge United at the moment? You obviously managed to get yourselves back out of the conference after a few years down there. What's the aims for the club? You've been up at sort of what is now championship level, going back 20, 30 years. Is there any ambition for that sort of thing again? Is there any ambitions to do anything more with the ground? Obviously, you develop the stand behind the goal. What's the hopes for the club?
Well, like short term, if we look at just this season briefly, I mean, we said at the start of the season on our podcast, like bare minimum should be playoffs really this season because, 7 years in the conference, building a good squad, things hadn't quite gone right, but you can go stagnant and it can lead to going the other way. So that was an aim for Cambridge. And with our game in hand and games in hand over teams, playoffs is still quite a realistic aim, really, because I think if teams win their games in hand, we'll be down to fourth anyway, and then there's still a lot of games to go. So Cambridge United need to look at the short term first and secure what would be a brilliant promotion. But slightly longer term, there's been a lot of conversations about a new ground in Cambridge. There's quite a lot of city politics surrounding it. And there's talk of it now being on a bit of land a bit further out on where Marshall's Airport is in Cambridge. There's a lot of talk about that. I think Cambridge United, for the first time in a while, are a bit more financially solvent. The owners brought in a couple of more investors who are now part owners, and I think there's a little bit of investment here and there. So I think, like, stability wise, Cambridge are doing quite well, and I think the aim should be to get to League One and then see if we can bolster. I don't think this squad complemented by 3 or 4 players would be challenging for promotion from League One. I think it would be more about looking the other way and trying to get survival. But I do think that should be where Cambridge United are aiming. And I do think that's certainly possible. As you said, you look at this squad and it might not be the most on paper kind of glamorous or, compared to some of the others in the league, but together they play really well and they definitely should be aiming for, for promotion, and no imposter syndrome should creep in, really.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up here then, Jack. Let's do the predictions. I mean, I'd say, well, how do you think it's going to go? But if you say anything other than a win for Cambridge, I think you're off your rocker based on the way we're playing at the moment.
That's the horrible poison chalice that comes with being a football fan at any level, but especially this level. You go into a game on good form. I mean, Cambridge have won 4 games in March and actually lost 2 early on to Scunthorpe and Bolton. The Scunthorpe one was a surprise. The Bolton one, not so much. Cambridge on good form. They've shown kind of good resilience in games that they maybe shouldn't have won or were on the back foot. And if we looked at this game on paper, I think we should go up there and win comfortably. I'd say 2-0. But I feel like Carlisle, it always throws up a battle away. We always hark back to a 4-4 draw when Jabbo was still at Carlisle many moons ago, and everyone always remembers that game. And I think I'm going to be optimistic on a Cambridge perspective because I think we've done so well in those games this season. I'm going to go 2-1 Cambridge, but I think it'll be a tighter game than people are expecting.
I wouldn't probably disagree with that. I can see a Jack Idell winning in the 89th minute the way we're playing right now. Jack, thanks for giving up your time. And normally I'd say good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday, but I don't think you really need any luck on Saturday anyway. So good luck for the rest of the season, and hopefully Cambridge can get themselves up into League One.
All the best. Thank you. Okay,
thanks again, Jack, for taking your time to speak to us about Cambridge's season. Mikey, it's nice to talk to a fan who's positive, because some of the recent ones we've had have been fans struggling near the bottom, aren't they?
Yeah, and to be honest, it sounds like Cambridge are everything that we aren't at the minute from a few of his comments there. But going on to Jack Idell, I do wonder, was Anderton an improvement on him?
I don't know. For me, Idell was starting to look okay. He started to find a bit of fitness and form. And Beech must have seen something in training and made him think, he's not going to work in the way I play. And he still used him as a sub occasionally, didn't he? But he basically dropped him and brought Anderton in. He was a solid addition when he first came in, and I think he still has been fairly solid. But you look how well Iredale's done for Cambridge, and he's played further forward for Cambridge in some games as well. You do wonder, is he one that's maybe got away? I mean, Dan, I know you thought he was pretty decent for us, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought he was, like you said, as the season came on, he seemed to get better. I'm just looking up his stats here as we talk, and he's scored 4 goals in 30 appearances in the league, which is pretty good for the left back.
He's scored some bloody good long range goals as well, and that's one thing
he scored 2 in 22 for us last season. You've got to remember, when he came to us last season, he was stepping up from Scottish Championship, which is the level below us. I mean, I watch a lot of Scottish football. It's if you're ever bored for watching a game on a Friday night, BBC Scotland often show a Championship game, and the level is Carlisle would be comfortable beating most of those teams.
Yeah.
And I thought he was starting to come into it, and I thought he probably deserved another season, to be quite honest. But Anderton had came in and sort of taken the spot himself. But is he a massive improvement on him? I would say the jury's out, to be honest.
No, I think Armour's got potential to be better than both of them, to be fair. So,
but I also think he'll end up as a centre back because of his size, as I've said a couple of times.
Which were funny enough, the position that Anderton wants to play long term. But there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about Cambridge briefly. Then, I mean, what a season they're having, Dan. I mean, couldn't have seen that coming, could we? At the start, I know they beat us comfortably on the opening day, but even then there was a feeling of we're a bit rusty and they've had a little bit of luck in this game, maybe. But the way they've played, and they're an example of a team that had a really sticky patch, and they dropped down to 10th at one point in the middle of the season, and now they're up there, and they've got a real good shot at finishing top 3, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking through they beat Forest Green in the last game. That's a good result. They were quite unlucky at Bolton. They were 2-0 down, but I think they certainly made a decent game of it. I mean, Bolton are absolutely flying at the moment, as we've said. But you look through the results. They took a bit of a tonking at Salford a few weeks ago, but as we know, Salford, which Salford turn up, isn't it?
Yeah, God knows half the time. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It feels kind of like they're in a little bit slightly false position because they've played a game more, I think, than most teams. But it feels to me if they can beat us at the weekend, then they put themselves in a really good position to really have a go for that top 3 place, don't they, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I kind of think that they're going up automatic. And it's a case of really who's going to join them. I know they're not top anymore, but I really can't see past them the way that they've been this season, and that they're picking up points against the teams around them, like you said in that Forest Green one, which is critical, really. And I think they've played most of the good teams now, probably twice.
Yeah, I think that I'm not feeling they have. But the thing for them as well is they're winning a lot of games. They're not drawing many. They'll lose the odd one, but because they're winning so many, they're not dropping as many points.
They've got quite a decent run in looking at their fixtures. They've got home games with Grimsby and Stevenage, and away games to Orient and Harrogate, which will that's not a bad run in. And they've still got a trip to Newport and Tranmere, and they've got Exeter at home. So they've got teams that are just a little bit below them, but.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference for them, isn't it, Wes Houlihan? You got to say,
yeah.
A player that Roddy Collins did try to sign. I got it wrong in that clip. It was actually, I think he went to Livingston in the end, didn't he? Instead of signing for us, but Roddy did try to sign him when he was.
I was introduced to Wes Houlihan and his dad after that famous Shelbourne friendly, and his dad was saying, "We'll be seeing you in Carlisle for a pint, lads." But,
sadly, it didn't work out that one because he would have been a hell of a signing, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Although we probably would have ruined him at that point, the way things were going. But there you go. But yeah, I mean, he, even at 38, 39, he's such a quality player at this level, isn't he, Dan?
Yeah, he's got the nous, and yes, he's getting on, but you can't take his ability and nous away from him. And he's your classic player who's far too good seeing out his days in a decent team, isn't he?
I think they've benefited from the fact that he lives in Norwich, doesn't he? And
yeah, definitely.
Didn't really want to commute to a club much further away, so Cambridge was the ideal club, I think, for him to sign for. I mean, the other player that they've signed last summer and has made a big impact, Mike, is Paul Mullin. I mean, without his goals, they probably would be sort of mid-table, wouldn't they?
Yeah, definitely. He's been absolutely banging them in, and like the guy in the Cambridge podcast said, he scores all sorts of different goals, and goals from outside the box is something that we've really been missing this season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to the Crawley game. I mean, they've just beaten a solid mid-table team this season, haven't they? They've had a couple of. I think they've twice been in the playoffs for like one game, I think. But bar that, they've not really worried either end of the table, have they, Dan? They just get along with it and don't look like they're in danger of going down, but not really challenging for a playoff place.
Yeah, the cup run won't have helped.
No, certainly not.
And there was a little bit of fuss when celebrity, lightly used term there, Mark Wright signed for them. He hasn't featured for them since his atrocious first half against Harrogate. But I'm just looking at what Ashley Naderson's done. He seems to come off the bench a bit. He started a few recently.
He's had a couple of knocks, I think, hasn't he, this season, where he's been out of the team. But
he's only scored 4 goals, but I think he's made a few for them with his.
Yeah.
We know he'll run all day. He's like the road runner, isn't he? He's got a proper engine on him.
Yeah, he's kind of play. Ironically, would do really well in this Carl United team, actually, in the way we play. I think, and the amount of running he does. Yeah, I picked Nadeson out as one of the danger men, but I think as well Tom Nichols has always been a pretty decent player for them, hasn't he? And Jake Hesketh, I think he was at Southampton, wasn't he? Not long back, and he's a decent prospect. I mean, their manager. I mean, we talk about the fact that Beech is always very positive after games, even when we play badly. Their manager John Yems. Not the same, really, is he? He doesn't mince his words. If they play badly or he's not happy with a question,
it's definitely worth YouTubing some of his best comments.
It's quite incredible, isn't it? I mean, I'd imagine they'd be pretty happy with their season, won't they? Because, I mean, they've not invested heavily in the squad in terms of signings, but they've never looked like they're going to be in threat of going down. And for them, they'll probably think, right, keep the basis of the squad together over the summer and improve on it and challenge for a playoff place next season.
Yeah. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, I think that's the way you'd look at it. In terms of United, like we said in the first half of the show, got to be aiming for at least 4 points from these 2 games, even if Cambridge are doing so well this season. If we've got any realistic chance of making a fist of something this season, of a top half finish, that's what we've got to aim for, isn't it?
I think most fans would expect us to lose against Cambridge. On current form.
You can get good odds on Cambridge winning though, can't you?
They were 5-2 at 8:30 last night. They're now 11-5. So there's a couple of folk have backed them. I think if we beat Crawley, you could maybe take a defeat off Cambridge in the current scenario.
Yeah.
But it'd be just like Carlisle to go and beat them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be typical Carlisle to beat Cambridge on the weekend and do it well as well. That'll be just so annoying.
And then lose against Crawley.
But the thing is, we always say like, if we lose against Cambridge but then beat Crawley, you'd probably say fair enough. But I'd say if we lose against Cambridge, the confidence is going to be so low. I can't see us beating Crawley. And I think
if we put up a decent fight and got beat, there'd be a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, we haven't lost in 14 games against Crawley as well. There, I put the kiss of definite there, haven't I?
Cheers, late.
That's guaranteed we're going to lose that one now, isn't it? I just for me, I'm struggling to be positive about either game, if I'm honest. In terms of team news, it looks like Danny Devine could be involved because he obviously was involved in the reserve game.
You'd certainly think he'd be on the bench at least, wouldn't you?
You'd hope, maybe. Morgan Feedy and Jamie Armstrong still both out with their injuries. Coyote, either injured or international duty, isn't it? He's just not going to be involved, I don't think. And it looks like Dickinson will be out as well, so... Yeah, just basically, I think the 18 we see is probably the 18 that's going to be picked for most of the rest of the season, isn't it?
It's worth noting as well that Lewis Bell got a good few minutes in the reserve game, seemingly after he has been missing for a little bit.
Although it's a different intensity, isn't it? And it's an easy way for him to ease back into football as well. And it comes to one of those ones. If we really drop over the next few games, you'd think surely the likes of maybe Keelan Leslie and Sam Fishburne will get a chance on the bench for the last few games, because why not? At the end of the day, that's the way you look at it, isn't it? Let's do some predictions then, guys. Dan, go on first. You give us your predictions for both games.
I will go for a hopeful 1-1 against Cambridge with... I don't care who scores, to be quite honest. anyone.
Zanzala.
And, yeah, give it to him because he's tried, hasn't he? And I'm going to go and hope we can nab a 1-0 win against Crawley just to settle the ship sort of thing. And that goal can go to Dean Furman because I'm his fan.
Okay. Mike?
I'm going to go for a 3-0 defeat against Cambridge because I can't see us getting anything from it.
Yeah.
But I'll go for a 1-0 win against Crawley with Zanzala scoring.
Who'll be manager in that game after Beech goes after the 3-0 defeat?
Eric Kinder.
Zanzala will be player manager.
There you go. Okay, I'll give you mine. Having a 3-1 defeat against Cambridge. I think Jack Idle will get one of the goals. I don't know if he'll do a Kevin Ellison in front of Chris Beech. Probably not, because I think he's a decent lad.
No, he doesn't come across as that type of lad, does he?
Not at all. I think our goal will be Alessandro, probably. And the Crawley game, 1-1. I mean, it's the best we can hope for from that game. Goal from Dean Furman. I agree with you, Dan. I'll go Dean Furman against Crawley. So there you go. It's just depressing, isn't it, really? You think
hard work, isn't it?
Weeks ago we were talking about 5-0 wins and things like that. And now look, we're struggling to even get excited about a draw. All right, let's get on to the X-Files bit. Dan, we've got a few bits to get through. Not too many goals this time, but some other interesting
some interesting tales. Well, first of all, today, ex-manager Greg Abbott has left his coaching role at Notts County.
Could he do a job for us?
An experienced head. Someone talk about experienced heads. Come and support him.
They've dispensed with their manager today, and obviously Greg's being part of his coaching setup has gone. So I know he's not. I think he's not fondly liked by some fans. I've never got understood that, but each to their own. Court action.
This is a great one, this.
Ex-loanee and former Man United and West Brom midfielder come defender Ronnie Holdsworth was out with his mate when someone slagged off his white trainers, so they filled him in.
So incredible, isn't it?
He's ended up with a suspended sentence. He's no stranger to the courts, Holdsworth. I've spoke to people in Manchester, and Jack the lad is the phrase that comes to the fore.
He looked a great player when he was on loan, wasn't he?
Was it a car clock in a garage or something he was involved in at some point?
Yeah, I think as well. Didn't he get attacked as well or something? Didn't he get stabbed?
Yeah,
he got stabbed,
so he's a bit of a Ravel Morrison type, isn't he?
But I mean, he was a good player when he was on loan with us. He looked a real prospect.
Fantastic. He only came here as bait for Janssen to go to Man United, didn't he?
Well, weren't we potentially going to get him permanently if Janssen had gone to Man United? But it fell through because of that.
Far too good.
No, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Goals, not too many. Former loanee Tom Anderson scored for Doncaster. Jerry Yates got a double for Blackpool in their good win against Peterborough last night, 3-1. And there's talk of championship clubs after Yates in the press this morning. Forest, Blackburn, I think Bristol City possibly. Yeah. So I think he's scored about 14, 15 goals now in the league.
He's a good player, isn't he?
He's doing really well.
We never doubted him.
Going into the National League for Bromley, unfortunately, it's not Byron Webster, but Jack Bridge scored last night for Bromley. So, and a red card, former loanee Hayden White got a red card for Walsall. I've not seen this, but I'm guessing it's nowhere near the level of his red card at Portsmouth.
I mean, that game, what a day out that game was. I mean, that red card was one of the most brain-dead red cards. He literally dived in 2-footed about a yard away from the referee.
It was like a move your character would make on a game of Street Fighter.
Yeah, it's like on FIFA when you just get pissed off with someone because they're taking a piss and you just lunge in. It was
my personal highlight from that game though was when Georgi Iliev, remember him, was clean through on goal, and then the Portsmouth players put their arms up and go offside, and then no flag went up, and then Iliev just picked the ball up and just.
He was awful, wasn't he?
I wonder what he's up to. I wonder what he's up to now.
I think he disappeared off the
he disappeared because I searched him out for the one game wonders stuff, didn't I?
Yeah, he's not one of the glory loan signings we've had down the years.
No, certainly not. But that's pretty much it. Not many goals this week.
Charlie White didn't score. I'm genuinely shocked by that.
I thought he did on the Saturday. Hang on.
Oh, you haven't got him down here, Dan?
Did I not? I'm maybe thinking of the week before. No, he got booked. He got booked. That was it.
There you go. So blame me.
It was the midweek game last week where he scored. I'm thinking of.
There you go.
On the Wednesday night, they played, didn't they, at Accrington?
Yes, he did indeed.
Because they were involved in some pathetic attempt of a competition at Wembley on the Sunday.
Yeah. Oh well, there you go. That's it, lads. Thank you for joining me for what has been a hell of a slog. We'll have to get looked into all the gremlins and stuff, won't we, for next week? We might give it a try on a different platform next week. Maybe see if we can get it to run a bit smoother, possibly. And that's it. Yeah. So if you've got any comments or feedback, anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in as usual via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. A lot of people did send something on Twitter about Chris Beech tonight, and I do apologise for the fact we didn't really get through them, but it was because we've had big technical issues of the recording cutting out tonight, so we just tried to get through to the end, basically, so you've got something to listen to this weekend. If you haven't already, as we said before, please subscribe to the podcast, via your whatever podcast app you use, Spotify, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can give us a review as well. I've been looking through a few of them this week. Thank you very much. A few 5-star ones on Apple Podcasts, always welcomed. The feedback we get is excellent, and it really does actually help us in terms of getting the message out to more fans about the podcast. Nowhere new on the world map, our listeners, guys. Just as we are, I think people are just losing interest, aren't they?
Yeah.
For the end of the season. Nothing to get excited about, but there you go. I think we'll be back probably similar time next week, won't we? Whether we'll be discussing, a great recovery and hopefully a decent running for the rest of the season, or we'll be talking about who the next manager is going to be. We'll have to wait and see. It's just one of those ones. We don't know what's going to happen, do we? Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.